Israel announced more than 80 of its fighter jets attacked what they called key Iranian military infrastructure across the Iranian capital and central Iran overnight, including Mehrabad airport in Tehran. Israeli jets also intensified attacks on Lebanon, repeatedly bombing what it said were Hezbollah sites in the southern outskirts of Beirut. It also carried out a special forces operation in the Bekaa Valley to try to retrieve the body of a soldier. At least 40 people were killed in that raid. While Iran continued to fire missiles at Israel, but no damage or casualties were reported. And the IRGC, Iran's Revolutionary Guard, say they hit 3 Kurdish separatist positions in Iraqi Kurdistan early this morning. Despite the Iranian president's apologies, the IRGC says its drones struck the US Air Combat Center in Dafra Airbase near Abu Dhabi this morning, and a drone crashed at Dubai airport. While Kuwait, Qatar and Bahrain have all reported more incoming fire. Saudi Arabia too has reported its Shaybah oil field has come under a series of attacks in the last 24 hours.
Israel and the US had promised a surge, a new phase in their attacks on Iran. Overnight, Tehran's international airport bearing the brunt. Israel today saying it had destroyed 16 planes belonging to Iran's Quds force, that the airport was a hub for arming and funding proxies in the region. And through today, fresh waves of attacks on Iran's capital, captured by its residents, uploaded despite restricted internet access. Israel's military said it had struck the Revolutionary Guard Corps' military university, along with missile production and storage sites. For some, it remains cause for celebration.
It's Saturday at 11:38. The dirty IRGC of Garchak district was hit. Congratulations to all Iranians.
Iran's state media posted images from the aftermath of a strike in Tehran. Iran says more than 1,300 civilians have been killed so far. One prominent rights group says the strikes have killed 310 civilians and more than 2,000 military and security forces members. Iran's president today blaming the deaths of senior commanders along with the supreme leader for more junior ranks attacking Gulf countries, issuing them a personal apology.
The decision we made in the Interim Leadership Council yesterday has been delivered to the armed forces. From now on, they should not attack neighbouring countries or fire missiles at them, unless we are attacked from those countries.
It's been a pretty wild time.
Comments immediately leapt on by the US president, who posted on his social media network that Iran had surrendered to its Middle Eastern neighbours.
Oh my God.
But such attacks have been continuing today. What might have been read as a de-escalatory signal from the regime, looking more like a splintering within it. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps promising to continue hitting US bases in Gulf countries as long as Iran is under attack. The view from one pro-Israel US think tank, Iran's president isn't in charge.
Pezeshkian is on an interim leadership council right now, an interim leadership council that includes the president, the head of the judiciary, as well as the cleric that straddles both the Assembly of Experts and the Guardian Council. The head of the judiciary has come out, Mr. Ejei, and directly contradicted Pezeshkian, as has the security services. And classically, Iran's president doesn't have the authority to be making these sorts of statements anyway.
Senior clerics today calling for a new supreme leader to be nominated as soon as possible for the sake of government legitimacy. Iran's state news agency saying that will happen within 24 hours. In Lebanon today, Israel's bombing campaign continued. This strike was in the southern city of Tyre. And in the capital, Beirut, the aftermath of last night's airstrikes. Israel has ordered the evacuation of almost all of southern Beirut, stronghold for Iran-backed Hezbollah, home for more than 500,000 civilians. Israel's defense minister threatening worse to come if Lebanon's government doesn't disarm Hezbollah.
If the choice is to protect our citizens and the peace of our soldiers, or the state of Lebanon, we will choose to protect our citizens and our soldiers, and the Lebanese government and Lebanon will pay a very heavy price.
The highest costs for now being borne by Iran's military and political architecture. Here in Tehran, here in Isfahan, a military base. The women behind the camera laughing in disbelief. How are they doing it, they ask. But as this air war goes on, without a clear goal, let alone an end in sight, its price likely to be felt ever more widely.
Well, as we've just heard, Israel has bombed areas in southern Beirut, as well as conducting a special operation in the Bekaa Valley, while Hezbollah has warned residents in northern Israel to evacuate ahead of an attack there. Our international editor, Lindsay Hilsum, joins us from Beirut. Lindsay.
Krishnan, the Israelis conducted an airborne raid on the eastern Bekaa Valley. 2 helicopters, they came down and practically every man with a gun started shooting at them. Now that's Hezbollah, it's also the Lebanese army and pretty much everyone else. So then they called in airstrikes, 40 airstrikes. At the end of this, 41 people were dead, including 3 members of the Lebanese army. The Lebanese army, remember, are not the enemy of Israel. It's Hezbollah who they are trying to fight. So the question is, why did they do this? They did it apparently because they were trying to retrieve the remains of Ron Arad. Ron Arad is an Israeli airman who was brought down over Lebanon in 1986. That's 40 years ago. It's completely unclear why they thought this was the moment to do this. They had intelligence, they've had it for some time, that this is where his remains were. But at the end, they did not manage to retrieve him, but they did manage to cause a lot of chaos and 41 Lebanese dead.
And Beirut also being hit.
Yes, Beirut is hit every night at the moment. There was a new evacuation order for the southern suburbs, Dahia. So people at the moment tend to go back during the day to be in their houses and then leave at night. Now, most of these people are civilians, they're Shias. The Israelis regard them as, I suppose, legitimate targets because Hezbollah is Shia. Hezbollah is there in this suburb hiding amongst the people. But now, according to the Lebanese government, 450,000 Lebanese have been displaced. That's people from those southern suburbs, people from the south of the country. Israel is occupying part of the south at the moment, and also from the Bekaa Valley. So this is the second front in this war, the first front being Iran. But in this second front, an awful lot of civilians are suffering, and the death toll is mounting by the day.
Lindsay Hilsum in Beirut. Well, Emil Hokayem is the Director of Regional Security at the International Institute for Strategic Studies, and he joins me now from London. Can we start with President Pezeshkian's message? What did you make of it? It was not sophisticated. It was done in quite an amateur way, but his message was intriguing with that apology to his neighbours.
Well, indeed, the president seemed to be quite embarrassed by the turn in events. He is certainly not the most powerful person in the Iranian structure. He wasn't the most powerful while Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader, was alive. And he has a quite marginal role at present. He's trying to keep Iran's relations with its Gulf neighbors alive. And it's not going well. Iran is quite dependent on its relationship with the Gulf states because it's cut out of the international financial system. So there's a lot of Iranian money in the UAE. There's lots of Iranian citizens there. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman had all tried to mediate to avoid that war. They saw that their diplomacy meant that they were immune to the escalation. But there's certainly those in Iran who see those countries as treacherous, as adversarial, because they have allowed the US to base itself there. And a couple of them have signed peace with Israel. So there are a number of more powerful actors in the Iranian system who think this is a legitimate target, but also importantly that it fits the bill. Iran cannot defend itself, therefore it will impose a high cost to its neighborhood.
Yes, and the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament has said that neighbours with US bases should expect to be affected, and there have been more attacks today. Now the other development is this suggestion that the Assembly of Experts are going to decide on a new supreme leader in the next day. I mean, is it clear how many of the Assembly are still alive? There's a lot of them.
We don't really know that. A couple of days ago, there was an attack on a building that was supposed to host some of these Iranian dignitaries. It's really not clear what the dynamics within the system are. Are the hardliners really on the rise and in control of everything? That's likely the case. But are there other voices in the system that are calling for another orientation? Are they able to make the case at all? We know the identity of some of the main candidates, and the most likely to win all seem quite hardline, including Mujtaba Khamenei, the son of Ali Khamenei. This is not going to be the development that somehow begins a de-escalation in the region. It allows the Iranian system to tell to the Iranians, but also to Iran's current enemies, the US and Israel, but also everyone else, that the system is standing, the system is functioning, and the system will carry on.
Of course, Donald Trump has said he'd like a say in whatever the Assembly of Experts want to decide. If we think back to last year and the way the 12-day war ended quite suddenly, it was clear that there was a good back channel to Iran. Is that likely to be in existence now?
It seems like the Iranians have passed a few messages through some of their Middle Eastern partners, probably a couple of Gulf states, Turkey, and so on. All these countries are worried that this conflict is spreading very quickly and in very dangerous ways. I mean, worth noting today that there was an Iranian statement that a water desalination in Iran was hit, which in turn makes the Gulf states very worried that Iran would use this as a precedent and hit their own water desalination plants, which are vital for these countries' daily life. So there are probably channels. They're not really functioning at present, I would argue. President Trump still makes maximalist statements, talking about total capitulation and so on. But importantly, I think Israel in June 2025 felt that it hadn't conducted as big a campaign as it wanted. And I think Israel really wants to continue this time. It doesn't want to be stopped in its tracks.
Just in a few seconds, is the Hezbollah threat to northern Israel credible? I mean, do they have much left?
Hezbollah is not a strategic force anymore. It has taken significant hits to its capabilities and command structure. It can impose a cost on Israel, but nothing that will make Israel rethink its approach. This is largely a spent force, and Israel is going for the kill.
Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Welcome back. Now, the extent of the UK's involvement in this war has significantly changed in the weeks since Israel and the US first began to strike Iran. The Prime Minister has had to defend himself from accusations that the UK had abandoned its allies and was too slow to defend Brits in the region after the Akrotiri base in Cyprus was hit by a drone. At the same time, many here in Britain fear being dragged into a war they believe is illegal and has no clear endgame in sight. Well, with further developments about British deployment, Francis Reid joins us from Downing Street. Francis.
Yes, well, we understand that the government this evening is now ordering one of the UK's 2 aircraft carriers to get ready to sail. That raises speculation that it could be deployed to the Mediterranean. The HMS Prince of Wales in Portsmouth would be ready to leave within days, and that's after heavy criticism about the length of the government's response time following the drone attacks you mentioned there on the RAF base in Cyprus. There is still no major Royal Navy warship in the region. The HMS Dragon, a destroyer, that's being sent there is still getting ready to sail. The MOD, though, confirming today that the US has started using British bases for what it calls specific defensive operations. American bombers and military planes have already landed at RAF Fairford in Gloucestershire over the last 24 hours. The government says it's to stop Iran from firing missiles into the Middle East that put British lives at risk. And the head of the British military today rejecting suggestions that the UK had been ill-prepared.
For several weeks now, we've been bolstering our presence and the forces in the Middle East, particularly at Cyprus, and doing that in consultation with our regional partners. We've added additional Typhoons, F-35, over 400 people to help protect and defend the airspace around Cyprus.
Also in London today, a large demonstration organised by the Stop the War Coalition. We were there. I'd estimate probably something like 2,000 people were in attendance, marching from Westminster to the US Embassy. Initial data from a YouGov poll suggests that the majority of Brits are opposed to the war, although it is somewhat nuanced depending on political opinion. I spoke to some people there who had actually been exiled from Iran, who said that they had suffered deeply at the hands of the Iranian regime, but still disagree with the US-Israeli attacks. At that demo, the former Labour MP, now your party MP, Zara Sultana, was making a speech, and I asked her to respond to the government's argument that they're defending British interests and security.
Is literally doing this because Donald Trump has asked for the UK to provide air bases, which make us complicit in a war that will kill thousands of people, and our interest is not going to be served in that way.
That theocracy has murdered thousands of people. There are people in Tehran who would be disgusted at this, who've been waiting for the US's help and promised help.
You cannot bomb a country into becoming a democracy, and I am not here to defend the Iranian government. I'm not here to defend any government in the Middle East. It is my job as a British parliamentarian to talk about how this government has been complicit in genocide in Gaza and is now involved in an illegal war.
Well, that demo was largely peaceful, although we have heard from the Met Police this evening who said there were actually 4 arrests, including a woman who they say was arrested on suspicion of inciting racial hatred in relation to a placard.